Hello and welcome to the class today. Thank you for joining me. We're going to paint a surfer at sunset today. I'm quite looking forward to it. It's a nice, not a difficult class. So if you're a beginner, this is a great one for you. If you have been painting for a while, join in. Should be a nice chill painting to paint. So there is a template if you want to paint with. I'm painting on I think it's a 12 by 16 canvas. So there is a template that you can go and print out and go and get all the reference photos and stuff from our website. The link is below. You do need to be a patron, but it's very affordable, so go and take a look at that. If you're not a patron yet, just sketch out the surfer as best you can for now. Remember, this is all about practice. So if it's not perfect, it's not the end of the day. All right, so let's go over to the photo, and I'll show you what that guy looks like. So I do have multiple screens here in the studio, so just bear with me as I change cameras. I have 4 cameras here in the studio. Alrighty, so that there is what the photo looks like. I found this one on Pixabay. That looked like a great photo to paint, eh? So I'm quite looking forward to us giving that one a bash today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jazz up the colors just a little bit. Use my artist license to jazz up those colors. We will end up with colors more along that line. And that'll just warm up the painting a little bit compared to the photo. So the colors I think we'll need there, we'll definitely need some cadmium yellow for that. There I'm seeing oranges in that vicinity over there. And here and there's definitely some raw umbers happening, especially like in that vicinity there. Obviously we'll need some white. And then here, just take a look here on the water. It seems to have a little bit of still a touch of blue in it. So we may add just a spot of French ultramarine into the paint at that point over there. So those are the colors that I think we're going to use today. We'll see how it goes, if these colors get us there. So when I'm doing something like this, you always start at the back and you work your way forward, right? So we'll start with the sky. So we'll paint the sky, and then that back row of mountain over there, and then the water and the beach will also happen sort of at the same time, and then lastly the surfer. So let's go over to the palette and let's start mixing up some colors for that sky over there. Alrighty, so we definitely got some white. Let's put down a fair amount of white over there. So even though I'm painting in acrylic, you're welcome to work along in oils as well. The techniques will be the same. Just when I add water, you'll add painting medium. This is some cadmium yellow. And then there's definitely some orange in that background over there, so that's some cadmium orange over there. And then in that top right hand corner, just to get that duller orange, I'm going to use a bit of raw umber. Yeah, I think those colors should get us going. So it's quite a bit of like a shading from left to right. So we've got our sun here on the left hand side. So I'm pretty much just going to fade these colors in as I go. So I don't think we'll mix any specific colors off the bat. We'll just mix them as we go, as we need them. So I'm just setting up the next shot over here. I think if I do that, then we should be able to see everything. So to paint that background over there, let me just show you here. So that's the sketch template we can use. So I've just used just normal carbon paper, and I've just sketched out the outlines of the surfer. This here, we don't know the place. Well, I don't know it anyway, so I'm not too worried about where that goes. So I haven't bothered sketching that out. What I will do for that is just take my watercolor pencil and a ruler. What we do want is that little water line over there to be straight. So I'll mark, what's that, 5? I'll mark the same distance on either side of the canvas. Then I'll use my ruler to draw a line all the way across. So there's my water line, because water always lies flat, right? And then we've got some hills and stuff doing that, and then coming out that side there as well. So what I'm going to do is, here it's cool, you've already got that little hill over there automatically, which is great, because that little extra height over there just brings your eye down, because your eye tends to follow a line. So that little down going a bit over there brings your eye in. So this, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Instead of bringing that out straight, I'm going to just raise that ever so slightly, also just to bring your eye into our focal point, which is the surfer. So obviously, if this is a place that you know and you need to get that silhouette right, then obviously, yeah, then you're going to have to do that correctly. And the same thing here with this water line ends. It's slightly down there like that. Where that ends is going to change depending on the tide and so on. So that's also not critical. Where you get that in. What does need to be accurate is the figure, because if she's not the correct proportions and stuff, it's not going to look correct. You're going to see it a mile away, and then it'll bother you forever. Alright, so to paint this, I'll just use a nice big brush. So here I've got a big soft filbert, but you could just as well have used a bristle brush like that as well. That's also fine. It'll do the same trick. So I start from the light, and then we work into the dark areas. So we'll start from here and fade everything outwards. So when you do that, can you see there's some clouds and stuff over here? Ignore those clouds. We're just doing the sky, and then we'll bring the clouds in over them. So let's get some white. So I'm just dipping my brush into the water, and that'll give me a nice flow on the paint. So that sun is in this vicinity around here. So I'm even going to paint straight over the surfer because those lines will still shine through. That's not a problem. So we'll add in that. And I'll take it a bit further than where it needs to be. And that gives me some paint on there to blend. So now you may be asking yourself, why on earth would you bother painting white there? Because the canvas is already white. It's because your canvas and your paint are not the same color. You get different whites. So that way, if I've put down some white paint, I know if I need to do any changes, I can do it and the white will look correct. Alright, so I'm working just a little bit of, just a tiny touch of yellow in there for now. Just want to put my reference picture up there, then it's easier for me to see and I don't have to look up so much. Alright, so we've got some yellows in this vicinity over here. And some yellows in this vicinity over here. Again, I'm happy going over the edge of that little skyline over there. Not a problem. So I'm just using little taps. Now, wherever it's white, I'm just leaving that open. Okay, so everything from there shades darker, and then there are some darker patches of yellow over here. So we'll add a little bit more yellow into the mix. And then as we go, we may as well tackle these little reflective bits over here as well. So here's some yellow in that vicinity over there, and then there's some yellow in there, some water over there, and here's a nice little reflection in this vicinity over here. Then we don't have to come back at the end of the day and do this. Okay, so here I've just adding a little bit of white in there. Get that yellow all the way onto that edge over there. Great. So now let's start adding that extra yellow. It's a little bit brighter over here. Because what's happening is your sun is now white. And then the colors are diffusing out from there, causing a bit of a shading. So I'm just gently tapping in some more intense yellow over here, so that it goes from a little darker yellow, lighter yellow, and then you've got those white patches in there, and that'll give us a feel for the clouds in the white area. Here, those clouds we'll just paint in. So from here on out, it's literally just a shading. So I'm going to put some more intense yellow down and fade it into the previous one. Just leaving those little lighter white gaps. Okay, let's get some more yellow in there. And now just a tiny touch of orange, just a little speck. Can you see that? You gradually bring in more. Here where they meet, just gentle taps. You can even use like a crisscrossing motion, and you can even use your finger just to soften out that that blending over there. Okay, now as we go along, let's may as well do this over here. If the paint doesn't want to flow off the brush, just add some more water to the paint. Okay, a little bit more orange, a little bit more yellow to get it a bit more intense. But not too much. Don't get it too intense. I find that when you're doing skies, you must rather keep your colors a little bit more on the pastel side. We always tend to make the skies a little bit too bright. Hi Nadizda, welcome. So I'm always quite cautious about adding too much color. I'm happy to keep it rather a little bit too much on the light side. Okay, now as we go into that corner there, we need to start dulling this down. So I'll just move this along like that and just bring in just a tiny touch of raw umber. Let's see what happens to that. Yeah, look at that. That's giving us the color that we need. Fantastic. Let's get this little, I think we can maybe even bring in a bit more. Let's get this little corner here more dull. So now remember, this is acrylic, and acrylic likes to be layered, so don't be shy. If this first layer of yours is not an intense enough color, feel free to go ahead and give it another coat. What I'm also making sure now is I'm making sure using this crisscrossing motion is it's getting into the weave of the canvas. You don't want those little white bits sticking out. So I do still have a few little white bits, and that's what I'm covering up now. Alrighty. So that's a nice little shading there, eh? Hi Rebecca, welcome. Alright, so now to do those clouds, yeah, I think, I think before we tackle those clouds, let's do that. Let's just do that. So otherwise this paint is going to maybe dry on us. We don't want that. So that's also still some of the browny sky color there. Something like that. Yeah, that's good enough for now. Just gives us that little bit of coverage over there. Alright, I'm going to wash that brush. We don't need him for now. Now we're going to go to a smaller brush. So for my clouds, I'm going to use this guy over here, which is basically a fine round brush. But you can also use just a normal bristle brush, but don't use the flat side. Turn it on each side, so you're using that, and it gives you that a bit of a rounded point. And that's going to give us those nice little fluffy clouds that we've got going on over there. So we'll start off just with some neat white. And let's take a look and see, where do we have these clouds. So I'll just take them, and I'm using just little circular motion like this. Gentle little rounded taps. And that's going to give that cloudy look. So these are really nice little wispy clouds. So as I work them across, I'm going to gradually just make sure there's enough contrast between whatever's there and what I'm busy with. So it's white and yellow. But you can see I'm not trying to clean anything, not pure colors. As long as you've got a contrast over there and you're using the same colors, you're okay. And I'm going to follow those shapes, but I'm going to follow them quite roughly. They don't need to be exact, they don't need to be correct, because in 2 minutes all these clouds are going to change, right? So as long as we can get that same or a similar wispy effect in the clouds, we're good. And that's what this little tapping and circular motion does. It gives you that effect. Alright, so as we go along there, those clouds now need to darken up. So I'll stay in this area with this color. Because what's happening is with the sun, it's making everything over here bright, and as we go further away, everything goes darker. So that's the sky, the clouds, you name it, all goes darker. Hi guys, welcome to the class. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, making sure there's more yellow into the mix. So as I keep adding paint over here, that yellow is becoming more and more intense in that spot on my palette. Now, can you see there isn't a ton of paint on the palette, on my brush, I mean. Just little bits of paint, that's all you need. Because that gives you like because it's just a little bit of paint, it gives you a bit of a transparent effect where you can see at some places as you tap, you get a thicker layer of paint. And at other places, you get a thinner layer of paint. And then you get that wispy, transparent cloud look. Okay, just before we go darker, I'm going to pick up some neat white. You can still see we've got can get a little bit more white in the bottom of this cloud over here. Just over there. Just a few little lighter bits here and there. Tiny touches. That's enough. Alright, so let's go to a bit more of an orange version. So you should be able to just use whatever's already on the palette. Just make sure whatever you're using has contrast against the area that you're painting it. That's all. So I'll often like just test. Put down, can I see it? No, you're still looking the same. Alright, so now I need to go a little bit darker. Or a little bit lighter or whatever. Try the next one. Still not. Add a bit more. Okay, let's check him now. There we go. Now we can see him. Now we know we're good to go. Now also just bear in mind that being acrylic, he is going to dry a little bit darker than what you put him down. Hey guys, welcome. Then to get the aerial perspective or the linear perspective in your clouds correct, you can make larger clouds at the top and then smaller ones towards the bottom, towards the horizon. Okay, so we've got those clouds over there. Let's maybe just add a little something up the top corner here. So you can see I'm roughly following the clouds, but I'm not trying to get it correct or identical. It's not necessary. There you can see a lighter one, so I'll pop a little bit of a lighter paint down there. Just a tiny amount of water into the mix as well. Alrighty, that should be fine. Okay, let's go back to the bigger brush and let's start getting that distant hill in over there. So for that, all these colors are gonna just flow one from the other. So I'll take some raw umber and some orange, a bit of yellow. So this is now just a darker version of the sky color. Let's check him. I can probably go a little bit darker. Okay, let's do that. Right, now I'm going to work on just on that silhouette, a nice little squiggly line. So as I pull him in, I'm shaking like this. And that forms that just a little bit of a jagged edge. So don't bring this too far in, because we do have a shading happening there. So I'll put that down over there. fill him in and get him as smooth as what I can for now. And as we move across to this side, gradually add a bit more orange and yellow into the mix to warm those colors up. So I'll put them down and then just using a flat side of the brush, just blend those colors into each other. Move it across, making sure it's getting more and more orange. And that's giving you that lovely infused light effect that you get at sunset. Can you see I'm keeping that as straight as what I can? That water's edge over there. Put it down, gentle taps to work it into that intermediate orange over there. Just a quick shading, but it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Remember, it's not a wall, so he's got all sorts of textures and stuff in it. So those little bit of paint effects would be great. I think I'm going to work just a little bit more raw umber just in this far edge over there, just to darken that up ever so slightly, just a little bit more. Okay, let's move across to this side over here. So we'll keep working on that. So you've got, it's a bit more of an orangey color on this side. So I'm using the oranges and the yellows. Get that nice little jagged edge over there. Alright, so here we can actually see that there are more than one mountain. So there's a bit of progression over there. So that's pretty cool. We can get that in. And just get that water's edge nice and sharp. That should do the trick. So let's use this all the way across there. Maybe add just a little bit more brown into the mix over here on this far edge. And create yourself, the same as you did the jagged edge over there and over there, you create yourself another jagged edge over here. Yeah, just like that, that's fine. Again, you can have a little bit of texture left over there. It doesn't need to be smooth. Alright, so now we just need a bit of a contrast, a bit of difference. So what I'm going to do, I'll maybe just bring a bit of white into that. Maybe a touch more orange. But you don't want a huge tonal value difference. If anything, that back mountain must be a little bit lighter to give you atmospheric perspective, making it look further away. Okay, we'll get our jagged edge, and now we just copy this jagged edge on this side. And then we can just color the rest in. So now because I'm using the filbert, I'm able to get nice sharp little details and stuff. If you're using a just a normal bristle brush, you may find that you're going to have to just go over to a smaller brush to get these little fine details in. Alright, that's fine. Now we can start moving down. Alright, I think I'm going to get just a little bit more of a glow just in that little area over there. So I'm just getting extra yellow on my brush. I'm just working it in here. So it goes from more yellowy over through to the orangey kind of colors. Just like that. Quick little shading there. Can you see how it's glowing a bit more now, eh? Hi Annie, welcome. Alrighty, let's do that water edge over there. So with that water's edge, we've now got this bit of a bluey tinge over there, right? So let's take just a tiny touch of this ultramarine. And I'm going to leave all those colors there because they the same colors we're going to need for here. If we start bringing that blue into here, we're going to contaminate what we're going to do here further on down, eh? So we'll just use a little bit of that blue in there, and there's a tiny touch over there in that vicinity. So I'm essentially going to make these colors a new batch over here. So I'll take some raw umber, touch of blue. There, instantly I can see I've got that color. Look at that. That's all it took. Wow. I thought I was still going to need to bring in all sorts of oranges and stuff. I think what's happened is you've now still got some oranges and stuff on the brush, and that was enough. Alright, so let's just maybe whack a little bit more of that, otherwise we won't be able to cover the area that we need to. Touch of water in there just to get it to flow, because it is quite thick now. And let's block this area in here. I think I'll just, that little ankle goodie there, I'm going to just paint over that. Doesn't matter if he disappears on us, we'll just work him back in. Yeah, now I can see it's better. It's changing color because that bit of orange and stuff that we had on the brush is now gone. So now I'm having to, as I remix, add touches of orange and yellow into it. So making sure I can see that there's that bluish tinge to it before I continue. So we want to get this whole area just blocked in for now. A little bit darker over here. That should be fine. So as long as you've covered the canvas and the weave of the canvas, you're good to go. Because you can see we've got all those other little, the glint on the ripples on the water. Okay, so as we get to here, we need to get that more of a glowing effect. So I'm going to take some more orange into there, touch yellow as well. So that'll now warm up this over here. I think we can even lighten it up as well with a bit of white. That should be fine there. There's some over here. So now be really careful. Don't come anywhere near that. Because you'll find that it's very difficult. White is a bit of a transparent color. Even though it's supposed to be opaque. It's honestly, it's not. So I'm going to bring just from here, and I'm just going to gently drag it in like that, so that there's almost no paint left on the brush when I get to there. Here we can fill it up. So you find that the yellow, or the white, sorry, doesn't cover as good as it should. Right, so this here is where the water ends. So we'll stop at that point. Let's just work on the water, and then we'll work on the beach. Because they're two separate things, they're two different things, there's two different techniques. So I've just noticed something interesting. There's like a bit of banding over here. Can you see that? That's just the camera actually picking up that banding. I don't know if it's just on mine, on my screen that's showing me that banding. If you see any banding over here, that's just the camera. It's a continuous shading over there. Those lines aren't there. I think that's just a function of the weave of the canvas and stuff. As we fill it up, that may disappear. The camera won't pick that up anymore. It's just a camera aberration. Alright, so now we need to get that ripple effect on the water. So we're going to do that with that glint from the sky color. So now I think I am going to go over to just a standard bristle brush. Dip that in the water. And now you need to look not at the dark, but at these little light bits that are shining on the water. And we're going to put those light bits in. So I'm going to use now a bit more paint. I'm going to mix up a bit more paint. Because this paint now needs to lie on top of that previous paint. And it also needs to be able to come off the brush without me applying pressure onto the brush. In other words, if it doesn't have enough paint on it, that paint is not going to come off. So for now I'm keeping it quite yellowy. Can you see that? Christine is asking using water or medium. Christine, I'm painting in acrylic, so I'm just adding water to the mix. Can you see it's quite a yellowy, more like this kind of a color, because this is going to reflect there. Those colors would reflect there. Those colors would reflect there, and so on. So I think I'll stick with that nice yellowy color. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the paint. Let me go to just the palette on its own for a sec. I'm going to pick up the paint. Look how I'm holding my brush. See, I'm holding it like this in the tips of my fingers. And I'm picking it up like this, turning it over, picking it up like this, so that I've got a layer of paint all the way across the length of those bristles there like that. Because we're going to be using that flat edge of the brush and not the tip like you normally would. And now we're going to be doing like a dry brushing effect. So you still hold that brush in the tips of your fingers and just gently drag it using absolutely no pressure whatsoever. You drag it across the surface of your painting like that. So now what happens is it just catches, because you're using such a light touch, you're using the texture of your canvas to give you that glistening, those little glinting bits on the water. Super light touch. So I'm not just using like a brushing and a tapping motion, so that these guys come out uneven. But I'm still working in a horizontal motion though, so that it gives you a bit of a stripy effect horizontally. That then makes it look like these little ripples that are in the water like this are picking up. They're glinting. Reflecting back little bits of sky back to your eye as that water shimmers and moves. Okay, now I'm going to just add a few little distinct liney bits as well, using the tip. So that's now creating definite little wavelets, because there's no big waves here. I don't think this lady's going to get too much surfing done today, to be perfectly honest. Because I'm not particularly seeing any surfing waves around. So all this is happening with a super light touch. Often the brush isn't even touching the canvas. Alright, so here on this edge we've got a distinct little, a tiny little wave happening over there. So for now I'm going to just leave him. We'll get the foreground in first, and then we'll develop that guy. Let's continue on this side over here. So let's see, over there is quite yellow, so I'll even just pick up some yellow and some white, just to lighten that up over there a bit. And I think I'll stick with the tip of the pen, tip of the brush, we can't really see any glistening detail over there. Get that off. Now let's just go to put something a bit darker. More like this. To see, I still haven't washed the brush. Each color just progresses from the next. And I'm going to use just a very light little tapping motion like this, using just the corner of the brush. Because we can't really drag it like we did over here. It's too fine. You can actually, even to get this little glistening effect over here, even use your rigger brush to get these individual little taps and stuff in. But I'm now just using the corner of the brush, which gives me basically a little tip. Very gentle, super light. More often than not, as I do these little taps, it's not even touching the canvas. I'm having to do them again, and that's giving me those super fine little dots that we need. Okay, I can rub a little bit again because this is a bit more solid over here. Right, in this area here we can do some of that dry brushing, that dragging again. I think I'll just use instead of that flat edge, I'll use this little thin flat edge. So as before, I'm making sure I'm working horizontally, because that's now giving me those little bits of just those little bits of waves over there. Let's just move him across for that area there now. So Christina's asking an interesting question. Do I prefer to paint in oil or acrylics? I learned on oil, so I've always got that affinity for oil. But lately I'm enjoying the acrylics more and more because it dries quickly. So that allows you to continue on to the next step sooner without having to wait for the paint to dry. Which is really nice thing to have. Alright, so I think I'm going to take some of that lighter version. And just add a few of these, just drag in a few of these little sparkles in this area here as well. Because we want these sparkles in this area here to be brighter than the sparkles on the outside. That, a few little horizontal taps. So I'm going mostly over the existing stuff that's there. Okay, I'm washing the brush. Same as here, we're making that lighter over there. So I think we can move our photo back to that corner again. Same as we had lighter over here, that now needs to go darker, eh? So I'm going to take some raw umber and some of the ultramarine. Work them together. to get something that's a bit darker. And I'm picking it up over the whole length of the bristles again. Now I'm going to drag some of this in from the right to the left. So you sort of got darker sparkles. So it's not really sparkles, it's just darker bits inside the, so that what's in other words, what you've got there originally become the sparkles. What you're painting now becomes as though that was the base. Hope that made sense. I'm not sure if it made sense to me. Like here, we've now filled this in, right? And then we've added those lighter little sparkly bits on top. Now we're kind of painting in reverse. In this area here, you've kind of painted the sparkly bits in between, and now you're adding the darker guys underneath afterwards. Okay, so sparkly bits and a little bit of lines for the waves. Okay, so now it's given us that beautiful light over here, and then darker out towards the sides. Alrighty, so we're done with the blue. Here, what we can do is, you've got really dark browny colors over here, and then a lot more oranges reflecting off the water over here. So same as what we did over here, we've sort of swapped. We added the dark and then added the sparkly bits, and then we added the sparkly bits and then the dark over it. We're going to do the same thing over here. We will paint the dark over here and add the lighter reflections over it. And here we'll add the reflections and then add the darker bits over that. So we'll basically take this and do a shading over that, and then add darker details here and lighter details over there. But no blue. We've done the blue now. So I think I'll go back to my filbert because he's a bigger brush. So let's get some raw umber, some orange. So it's quite dark. And there's a little lighter edge over there. So I think I'll just leave myself a little bit of a gap. And that way I don't have to paint too much of these colors closed when I'm trying to get that lighter little strip in over there. So that little strip there is basically when your wave is now broken and now it's gone back. So you've got that little bit of thin layer of water lying there, where this here that we're painting now is actually solid just wet sand. But there's no layer of water lying there. Alright, so now as we move across, we're going to gradually lighten it. Yeah, and I think that kind of a color over there is not too bad a mixture for it. So that was, let's get some orange, lots more yellow into that. And a bit of white. He's wanting quite a bit of yellow. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so we've got that lovely little color over there like that, and I'll work this into here before this paint dries, just to create that shading. But I'm not going to try and get them a perfect shading. I'm just going to use little lines like that into each other, because it's going to be stripy afterwards anyway. So there you go, you're already halfway towards that stripy effect. Okay, let's get some more of this and continue on this side. So that stripy effect is because the beach isn't flat. It's got those little humps and bumps. I think this can just go all the way out to the other end. Just the one color. That should be fine. Alrighty. So now we're going to take some of that and bring it in here as details. So maybe I can pop that photo of ours in that top corner over there. So because I'm using the filbert, I'm able to turn him on his side and get those nice little thinner lines. So for the most part, these guys are horizontal. But not necessarily. So get them as straightish as is good enough. So some of these lines, as I put them in, some are going to be longer, so some are going to be shorter. Some are going to be broader, so some are going to be narrower. So unfortunately, I do need to go into the surfer, and I suppose that's fine. Just don't lose this edge where her legs are as you do this. Luckily, the paint that we need to use there is dark, so we get away with going over the legs. Okay, so can you see what's happening? It's giving you that little bit of a hump and bump effect. Just a light little chopping motion like that. And now what I like to do to get continuity is I'm going to take at least one or two of these lines that I've got over here, and I'm going to continue them on that side of her legs, so that we can see that the ground is going past her, and that it doesn't stop on this side, and there's something completely different on that side of her. You have to have that continuity. So even if you have to paint over her legs completely like that, to make sure that it goes in the one side and out the other. It's quite a common mistake people make. Because you're having to paint this last, you tend to paint around it and not past it. And then all your background objects seem to go around the foreground objects. And then in that process, you've actually lost a lot of your a lot of your distance and your depth, because that then places them next to each other and not behind each other. Alright, so I think we've got as much in over there as what we need. It's looking good. Now over here we can start doing lighter bits. So I don't think I'll bother washing the brush this time. I'm just going to take my roll of paper towel and just wipe off that excess dark. And then we'll go back into that original light color that we had and pick that guy up. And I'm going to just continue with what I was doing there, using the lighter colors. Just a nice little chopping motion like that. It's all really light. Super light touch. Now, to go out there, this needs to still continue going darker. So I'm going to take some of these two colors and mix them together for these final little jabs and dabs on this side. Okay, now let's go lighter, because here we want to keep reflecting lighter stuff over here. So I'm going to take oranges and yellows. Just lighter versions. Maybe something like that. And now I'm going to create a bit of a progression from here through to there. So I'm going to take some of these colors and I'm going to pop them down there behind this little light strip. Then I'm going to take some of them and pop them down in front of the little light strip. Just here where the sun itself is reflecting. So light little taps and lines. Very, very gentle. Take them past inside her legs. Like that. Over the surfer, that's fine. And as we come out over here, just less and less. I'm using a few, just a light, super light touches and taps. And the same as I come down here, I'm also going to gradually make sure that there's less and less paint on the brush. Light touches and taps, so that the majority of that is here. So it's going light, medium, dark. Let's get just touches of that on this side as well for continuity, to make sure that there's stuff going behind the surfer. And again, I'm making sure less and less paint on the brush so that it's a fading out towards the right hand side and towards the bottom of the canvas. Same as I did on that side. Alright, one lighter version, definitely. So I'll do that. Now I'm going to pick up some yellow, but clean yellow. Can you see that? I pick up some white, clean white. Mix them together. That should be good. And I think I'll actually even go to a finer brush. So let's go to a fine round. Let's pick up some of this paint. Now we're literally going to paint some individual dots. That brush is not fine enough. I'm going to use a smaller fine round. And I'm going to just work in some of those really bright, those yellow sparkles. Not right here where it's white, in that in-between area over there. So it's just tap, 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 tap. So this is emulating that dry brushing that we had, just on a smaller scale. It's too small for us to do that dry brush dragging effect. So we just have to do it manually here for this little bit of a transition area. It just adds that extra shine, that's all. Little bits of it over here, not too much, because most of that is reflecting here. But we have just maybe an odd little bit reflecting over here for continuity. And the same thing, it's going to reflect over here, and then less and less as we come down over here. So there's not much of it, but it just adds that extra glow. I think you can see it. Alrighty, let's work on that. That little line over there, so we'll stick with this color. It's not a full-on blocking, it's just getting rid of most of that. Maybe now we can go over to a larger brush. Just a bit of a glaze of color over there. And as we go across, it's getting darker. I think you're starting to get the idea now, eh? Everything here is bright and everything away from it is going darker. So lots of little like shadings that we're busy doing here. So get that guy in over there, and I'll just fade him into that yellow over there. And I'll take it same over here, fade him into that yellow over there. So there's even our glow in that little bit of water that's over there. Now I'm going to make sure that this edge is nice and sharp. So I'm going to very carefully go over that edge over there. That bottom edge. Pick up more paint and do the same for the top edge. Okay, in this area over here, you've got a whole bunch of little smaller ripples in the water. So it's more of these kind of lines. Just using these lighter versions. Now I'm even going to use a bit of white in this area over here. So I'll pick up some white, make sure it's nice and clean and neat. And add a few of those little white dots in there. Maybe I can zoom in on that area just so that you can see better what I'm doing over there. So let's go to that view for a second as I adjust the camera. Yeah, let's go to there. Right, so I'm adding just tiny little dots. So I'm dragging the brush over the canvas, but at some places it's sort of lifting up. And that's giving that same dry brush glinting kind of effect. Okay, so can you see here's also just a little bit of water lying there. That's now giving you a nice reflection. So I'm popping that in literally with neat white. Then I'm going to wash the brush and pick up some of the yellow and just add a little bit of it very carefully around there. So it's a kind of a shading. And now you can also see how nice that dry brushing effect is. It just catches the top of the weave of the canvas. Pretty cool, eh? Okay, let's go back to here and then we can zoom out again to the previous view. Which I think was something like that. Okay. Let's take a look. We've got more of that water lying along there. So let's add those guys in as well. So it's the same technique. Here you can have light bits reflecting. So you'll start off with the white. And I'm going to follow those shapes very rough. Remember, these are just little puddles, so they could be any random shape. And then as we move to the side, they gradually become more yellow. So I'm not being shy with the paint as well. I'm happy for this to be quite thick, because it needs to cover that dark that's there. So now notice it's reasonably horizontal as well. I think that's quite important. So I'm following that shape as best I can, and as we come out to this side, I'm going to gradually make it a little bit more oranger, so that as with the rest, it's gradually fading and becoming more orange. So that this water that's lying there is reflecting the correct color. There's a little bit more lying over there. Here's even more orange. And then towards that side there's also another one, but now I've got really orange on the brush, so I'm going to have to wash it, get a bit more of the white and the yellow mix. Let's get that little let's maybe have a bit of a bigger puddle over here. Why not? What the heck? Okay, so we're heading towards the end of this. Let's see, there's a few more little orangey puddles at that direction. So we're heading towards the end of this beach, so that's pretty cool. So there's some more water lying over there, right? Now this is further away, so make sure that this line stays thin. Don't make him thick, otherwise he's going to sort of bring it too far forward. Because basically what happens is, let's take this. Let's pretend that's a puddle. So when you're looking down on it, you see it at that size. But now, over the distance, now you're not looking down at it, you're looking across it. So look what happens. It appears to be thinner, 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 thinner. Until way out in the distance, all you see is that little stripe. See there? So here you get broader, over there needs to be thinner. Alright, now let's work that little bit of a wave in there. So for that, I'm going to wash the brush. Stick with a small brush though. Let's get a bit of that bluey color. So that was raw umber in French, ultramarine. Let's start over here. So right in front of that little bright puddle, I'll start with the dark right up against it, nice straight line. As I go up, I can give it a little bit of a wiggle and a squiggle, because this is now a little breaking wave there, you see. So that little wiggle and a squiggle shows you the top of the wave. As we move across, I'm going to gradually get rid of that blue and gradually get it more orange. Because even that wave itself, as with everything else, infuses. with the colors around it. Wiggle and squiggle the top. And there we go. So look there, we've formed ourselves a little bit of a shading. So there's the leading edge of our wave. And he is just disappearing on us over there. Now we need to take something bright, because now you've got that as that wave breaks over like this, you've got the foam and stuff, and that foam and stuff is light, so it's picking up catching the nice sunlight bits, sunlight colors again. So let's see, it does seem to be orangey over there. I'm going to add just a little bit of this lighter color in there to make sure that he's a bit brighter. And I will add this in as distinct little a distinct little wavy edge like that, right on that little wavy edge that you created with the dark on top of that, but not solid and all the way across. It mustn't become a line. Remember, your wave breaks at places. So maybe over here, this wave is breaking quite a bit. And then it peters out again. And then maybe over here is breaking over again. So we'll add a bit more over there. Like that. See in there. As we come to this side, I'm going to add a bit more yellow into it. There, and it just fades away, disappears into that, and there that wave is now gone. Alright, so let's just get that last little bit of tie in over there. So that's more of this stripy effect that we did over here. It's the same thing, just using different colors. So here's an interesting thing. Can you see here? You've got some of this is actually reflecting over there. So I'm going to pick up some of that browny color. Doesn't need to be the same, just a browny color, and I'm going to just reflect some of that in this area over here. I think we can get it maybe a bit darker. Alright, so now let's use some of this color. Let's see, that ends. It's got a little edge over there. And then we've got some of this. Very little paint on the brush, wiping most of it off. Very little paint on the brush. And we just continue with these little stripy effects. Very gentle touch on the brush. So there, where those two met in a hard edge, now I'm just going to soften that by going over it with these intermediate little colors and stuff. So here's a little darker patch, so I'll work it in. So I'm following the photo, but not slavishly. I'm just going to very roughly use it for a guide to give me a feel for what type of colors are going where. Here, it's also some of those guys. And then it sort of becomes an orange, eh? We'll start off with the fade comes down, becomes more orange. I'll just work. Very light. Just the absolute tip of the brush is touching. Okay, over here, she's now casting a shadow over there. So let's pop some of that. Let's pop some of that shadow in as well. So that's a bit of an orangey brown color there, right? Like that. Okay, let's get this in over here. Now we can go lighter. So I'm going to actually wash the brush for now because I want to get some of those lovely yellow, some nice vibrant yellows in this little reflecting area over here. Quite dirty on the palette over there now, eh? So let's do this. Not much, just like a pea size. I think I could safely steal some white over there. That's still clean enough. Get a bit of yellow in there. There we go. That gives us a nice bright yellow. So that's what we've got there at the moment. So I'll continue to add more yellow into it until I can see it's more vibrant than what's there already. Let's add some of this around that. Fading away to either side, right? But we're fading it away using this chopping motion. Great. Okay, I'm washing the brush again, because now I want to do a little bit of neat white. So I'm going to carefully pick up some white, put it in a clean spot on the palette, and make sure there's a good amount of paint on this brush now. And I'm going to put in a few distinct little white, super white reflections. Just in this vicinity over here. Directly across from where the sun is. Making sure that one or two of them flow past the surfer. Just to get that really bright sunlight reflection over there. Like a sunstrike effect. Yeah, I can still get this little reflection of the mountain a little bit more solid, a little bit more defined in over there. That should be fine. Yes, all the hard work is done. We're in the home stretch now. Let's do that, because now we need to do our surfer. So now it's finer work, finer detail work. So big brushes are not going to work now. So I think I'll go over to a fine round. Now look what's happening. Inside her, we can't see any detail, right? But we've still got that same infused light effect from the sun. So there's lots of orangey kind of yellowy colors over here. Here, where less light can get, it's darker. So we're going to do the same thing on our painting. So I've got lots of different colors here on the palette. No need to mix anything new at this stage. We can just steal what we've got. So let's start off with this orangey browny kind of color over there. And we'll start there and we'll just work our way down. So I'll get that lightest bit in over there. And I'm using the flat part of the brush just to make sure that this comes out nice and solid. And then as we move down and across towards the right hand side, gradually add more raw umber into the mix. Keep using that flat, I'm not using the tip of the brush, I'm using the flat edge to get as smooth a shading as I can in this initial layer. If you're really lucky, you'll be able to do it in one layer. Alright, so that's front of her face. It's better to go over to even smaller brush, just a fine liner. You do now need to get a good silhouette. Alrighty, now we can go back to the larger brush. Just carefully fade that out towards the left hand side into those colors there. I think for now let's leave the avoid the surfboard. We'll give him a slightly different color just to differentiate. Always just that little bit lighter here on the left hand side. Just to get that glow of the sun inside the figure as well. It doesn't need to be high contrast, but it needs to be there. It just stops your figure from becoming just like a cutout. You know, when you're doing something like this, you'd be quite tempted to just block it in with black, eh? But if you're doing that, then you end up with a lifeless figure that has no form and no shape. By doing it like this, now at least you've got 3D. Even though you can't see any distinct shapes. Okay, so I think I need to leave that headpiece now to dry. It may need an extra coat, we'll see. Alright, let's move down here. So here's quite away from the sun. So very little orange into the umber. Yourself a nice smooth flowing silhouette. If you need to, go over to a smaller brush. So it's just the heel of the foot, and then there's some toes on the other foot. Something like that. And then from there, it's all reflections. So I'm just going to wiggle and squiggle it down to show that reflection over there. Okay, let's go to the other edge. I've run out of raw umber. Let's get some more with a bit of orange in it. That should be cool. A bit of water. And let's get this other. I think for now we can see there is a bit of definition, because you've got some light coming in just in this area of here to define the two different, or where the two legs meet. But I think we'll just gently try and work that in afterwards. For now we can block all of this in. Solid. Yes. Okay, let's take a look. Get some more raw umber into that, because we may as well just tackle this arm at the same time, eh? Why not? So this is quite a bit of raw umber in this one. Because in this area here, this is now really far from the sunlight. So you won't have much infused light in this area here. Or not as much as in the rest of the body anyway. And that hand goes just past the edge of the surfboard as those fingers curl around. So let's do that. I think while we're at it, we may as well tackle that little band thingy there. So I've now painted over mine. I can't see what it looks like anymore, so I'm just going to estimate it. That'll be close enough. Good enough. Yeah, just like that. That's good enough. Can you see that nice glowing effect that you've got over here? Looks pretty nice, eh? does need a second coat though. I can see it's a little bit little. And then to get that separation over there, that little bit of light that's shining in, we'll have to leave that to dry. So let's do the surfboard. So he's got a little bit of also a bluey tinge to it. So I think we'll use this color with that little bit of ultramarine in it for there. And that'll give us that separation between the body color and the surfboard color. So I'll do that. Just a little bit of white in it to get it a grey. Now I can distinctly see it's not the same color as that. So I'm comparing this color versus that color over there. I have to see a difference, otherwise they're not going to show up. Yeah, that's a definite grey now. Awesome. Hopefully I've mixed enough paint. I probably didn't, but anyway. Let's check it. I'll put it in. Can I see the difference? Yeah, I think I can see a difference there. Awesome. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to, for the first time this painting, use my palette knife, my painting knife. And just mix up an amount of that. Because it does not need to fill quite a large area of the canvas. Bring enough glue in there to make sure it's more of a grey than a brown. Tiny touch more white. Yeah, there we go. And we may not even be able to use a larger brush. So I'm not going to worry. There's another color over there. I'm not going to worry about that. That's something you can just estimate in. You can see that there's a distinct difference in color. Nice and sharp here against the arm. Alrighty, let's get this last little bit of canvas covered. So if you do now, for example, accidentally go over the arm, it's not a train smash. You can always just bring it back in afterwards. Just a smaller brush to finish off that tip over there. Alrighty, that's cool. Right, so I think I am just going to add a quick little extra layer over here just to get her body more solid with the paint isn't quite solid enough yet. And that'll just add it'll just solidify those colors and make them look more intense. So your figure would be more solid as well. Now that that paint is dry, and you can see it didn't take long to dry, eh? You add another layer and then it becomes a nice, beautiful, intense color. And you can see the color I'm adding now isn't necessarily identical to the one I initially put down, and that's okay. It'll be similar. That'll be good enough. Be really careful to not mess up the edge that you've got there. That nice little silhouette. I think I'm actually even going to make this little outside edge even more yellow than what I originally had it. And that'll intensify that glowing effect that we've got. Because now there's more contrast between the left and the right hand side of the face. So just gentle taps using the side of the brush just to blend those guys into each other like that. Okay, we'll continue working down and across. And gradually darker as before. Alright, so let's take a look. Let's take, say, just that kind of color over there. And let's just work it in down here. And that'll give us that definition that we need. Very low contrast, it doesn't need to be. Then you make sure you get the right hand leg nice and solid. Now you've got that, just that little bit of a shading over there. And that adds all the definition that you need on this figure. Alrighty, so let's turf. Let's turf everything. Let's stand back and see what have we got and what do we need. Because now it's just finishing touches, eh? I'm going to grab a rigger brush. Dip it in the water. Get it nice and thin paint. So now we've got that running over there. And I'm not sure if that surfboard is quite dry yet, so I'm going to just zap him with a hairdryer. Hi Roger, welcome. Okay, so now I'm going to wash the brush, because I do want to get a bit of an infused light effect on the surfboard as well. But we're just going to do it with a quick little glaze of these sky colors that we've got. So let's see, let's maybe just take, say, something like this, and I'm going to work quite a bit of water in there, because we just want a tiny amount. We don't want to turf that grey that we've got there. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just work most of that paint back off the brush again. And we add a really light little glaze over here. And outwards. And from the top, going down. Super gentle, because you don't want to lift up the paint underneath. See there, now it's just got that same glow that you've got in the rest of the painting. Everywhere else, you've got that same nice glow in there. Right, so now I'm just going to take a bit of dark and just add one or two little stones and things floating around. Just a few goodies for contrast. Like that. And then of course, really important, would be the birdies in the sky. Can't have a nice sky like that and no birdies in them. There we go. See, that adds just a ton of extra movement into the painting. Those guys over there. Yeah, so I think we'll call it a day on that. I think you've learnt quite a bit today on how to get some nice clouds effect, how to get that sparkle on the water, and the shine and the reflection, as well as some infused light effects. So if you got any last questions, fire away and I'll answer them for you. Yeah, so I think let's go to over there. So I hope you enjoyed that class. I certainly did. It was quite a bit of fun. Not a difficult painting, eh? A little bit of a process. How long did it take us? Yeah, about 2 hours to paint it. So my website link is at the bottom there. If you did enjoy the class, I've got hundreds more on my website. Go and take a look over there. If you become a patron, you get access to all of them for a very good price. See you, Patricia. See you, Kamlesh. It was nice having you in the class today. Enjoyed having you join us. So I preempted you with the birds in the sky, Christine. You're welcome, Alpazar. Thanks for joining us. Was this I think this was your first class with me, eh? Were you painting with Virginia, or were you just watching today? You're welcome, Rebecca. Is it cold there where you are today? If you say this has warmed you up. So if you were painting this with oils, then you would just work in, because obviously then your surfboard, you couldn't dry it, right? So then you would just work in a little bit of some of, say, that color over there into this paint that's there, and just do a basic little blend. Maybe just thin down the paint a little bit more with some more medium in it. You're welcome, Christine. Okay, that's cool, Eugenia. How far did you get with your painting? I know a lot of guys sort of paint with, and then sometimes they get a bit behind. But that's fine. That's what rewind and pause and play is for, hey? Have a great day, Patricia. Bye, Annie. Thanks for joining us. Alrighty, so I'm not seeing any new questions come through, so I think let's call it a day on that. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Next week we are drawing a curly hair. That's going to be quite interesting. So if you are watching the replay, go and take a look. It's either here on the channel, or if you want to go and get the template for this class and all access to all the other ones, please go and take a look on my website. The link is below. Cheerio. I'll see you next time.